Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for your time today, and thanks to IOSH for the opportunity to share what's going on with the mental health initiative in the construction industry. My name is Martin Coyd. Until recently, I was Regional Head of Environment, Health and Safety for Lend Lease in Europe. Prior to that, 12 years at Skanska, and prior to that, 18 years with the Royal Engineers, working in construction all around the world. And perhaps the least likely advocate of mental health, based on my background, which is pretty much around man up and get on with it, and make sure you're able to deliver at all times. So I'll get going. I'm part of the Health and Construction Leadership Group, which was formed about 18 months ago out of a Cognac meeting where the organisations you can see on the screen now questioned what we were doing around health in construction, and we decided on going forward with three things: integrated health management, maintaining the impetus on respiratory risks. IOSH have got a very strong leading role there, and a new industry approach to mental health. So we've had two sessions. One was the CEO's breakfast in January, and this was followed up in April with an event at Excel for people we described as the doers. We had well over 100 people in the room. When asked the question of, are you interested in a one industry solution to tackle the mental health challenge, we got an 89% positive response, 10% saying don't know, and 1% said no. So I believe there is a strong desire for a one-stop shop for mental health. The aim is to create a national construction industry mental health awareness and suicide prevention programme. So this is changing the culture and working environments across the whole of the UK. One of my colleagues at HICLG, Peter Crosland, tells me that 2.6 million people work in and around the construction industry, if you include manufacturing and supply, so each and every day. And all of those people have children, brothers, sisters, parents, people they love, friends, and colleagues. So the reach we might get here is massive. We would create a support network, which would be construction industry wide, and we have the opportunity to improve and enrich the lives of literally millions of people by beginning a simple conversation around the difficult topic of mental health. In doing so, we'd provide benefit to UK PLC. Some of you will have seen that the government are taking a lead on this, and the BBC did a mental health month in February, when there was a whole month of programmes. I woke up this morning to the BBC News to see Audley Harrison, amongst others, talking around mental health issues and promoting mental health first aid. It happened to be in Exeter, was where that show was coming from. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, hosted a round table, which I had the privilege to attend, with CEOs of FTSE top 30 companies, including the likes of Royal Mail, Linklaters, KPMG, Bank of England, HSBC, etc. And there's a very real dialogue starting. And finally, the Royal Princes and Kate are setting up something called Heads Together, with three parts to it. Kate is leading on children and young people, Harry's doing armed forces, and William has the rest. And we can be part of the rest. So we can benefit UK PLC, we can make a real dent on the industry nationally, and it gives the Health and Construction Leadership Group a pilot programme to get its teeth into, and we can begin to deliver something pretty quickly. It is really important. As part of my roles previously, I was chair of the UKCG and recently the Build UK Occupational Health Group, and the feedback that was coming in all the time to UKCG from the supply chain was, can the major contractors please use the same system so we don't have to do a different way of working when we move from project to project and company to company. And I've got that really loud and clear, that the opportunity with a single system which is recognised by everybody and we can do mutual support is a great opportunity. Conversely, the risk we have right now is organisations doing something really important, and it would be the right thing, but we miss the opportunity by going it alone. So who's the stakeholders? Well, with Health and Construction Leadership Group, it's everybody. It's the leadership group is represented by clients, unions, contractors, developers, specialists, manufacturers, support industries, and I'll stop reading the list at you. But it's very important we've got the mental health community interest companies in the room with us, and also IOSH, CITB, Health and Safety Executive are all part of this, and it's absolutely a joined up effort that is the real strength of it. I stumbled into mental health on the 26th of September 2010, watching a game of my favourite sport of rugby league on the TV, and the broadcast was interrupted to announce the death of Terry Newton, who you can see on your screen. Terry Newton was a legend of rugby league. He played at Wigan and Bradford and Leeds. There you can see him playing for Great Britain against Australia, and was one of the toughest guys there is in the toughest sport there is. And the game went into shock of how could this possibly happen, where one of our athletes, one of our leaders, most recognised players, has decided to end his own life. And the startling thing from there was that other players, senior players, respected players, legends of the game, and people who'd been retired a long time said, I've had similar thoughts, I've reached the depths of despair, and I've also considered ending my own life. This was a real surprise, because this type of thing was never discussed in rugby league, which is a particularly tough culture. And the organisation's state of mind came out of this, and last weekend was state of mind round in the Super League, and all the players recognise this by wearing state of mind shirts and getting into open discussions around this. And on the back of that, I was asked to attend. I was personally working at Harlequins at the time as an academy manager down at Harlequins, and was asked to attend a mental health course. When I went along with a pretty relaxed point of view, and half an hour into the course, I recognised that what they were actually talking about was life rather than anything associated with sport. And it also occurred to me that the construction industry is very, very, very similar to athletes and sport in general, in that you have to prepare and perform and be your best and deliver. And a project is almost like an Olympic Games, where you'll work up to it and have to deliver. And if you don't deliver, you lose your job, and an athlete won't get selected, and will do that. And the pressures are exactly the same, and it's hard. The difference is with an athlete is they recuperate after an event, and we don't in the construction industry. We tend to deliver a project, and I've probably started the next one already, and just continue to drive very hard. So I began to take an interest in mental health and became an instructor with Mental Health First Aid, which was a Department of Health group, which was cut in 2007-2008 due to lack of funds. And the people who were leading it for the Department of Health took it outside and set it up as a not-for-profit group there. It's now operating in 16 countries, and mental health first aid is exactly the same as physical first aid, where if somebody falls and bangs their head and bleeds a little bit, we'll tend to go and get a first aid kit, elevate the limb, apply dressing to the wound and arrest the bleeding, and then get the person to professional medical help. Mental health first aid works in exactly the same way, which is just giving immediate and initial support to people who may be in distress and need some support prior to getting the professional help. Very little is known around mental health and construction and rates. There's very little data. I've pulled out a couple British Journal of Psychiatry in 2013, said that we're at elevated risk. Greatest risk were labourers, cleaners, and elementary occupations. And then in 2003, a study by Broughton and Pearson, which was supported by UCAT, the Union of Construction and Allied Technicians Trades, did a study in East Kent, and 16% of male suicides had occupations in the construction industry. And then there's a suggestion, and this was from an article in Building magazine called The Dark Side of the Industry, which talked about a construction suicide every 2 days. And this was the data I began to work with straight away. Looking at men in general, the British male is our problem. The mental health charity Mind did a study in 2010 called Delivering Male, and the conclusions were that the British male in particular do not display symptoms of low mood and mask it with alcohol, drugs, or an aggressive stance. And it's very difficult for the British male. We have a culture of fighting people on the beaches and never in the field of human conflict, etc. There's this tough guy image, which is very prevalent in the construction industry. We get out of bed, often before 6 o'clock. We travel distances to get to work, and we work in a attritional environment, which is sometimes cold or wet or hot, and it's hard work. And the opportunity and the ability to express how you feel and articulate how you feel, particularly if you're feeling down, doesn't present itself very often. And this embarrassment causes people not to ask for help or acknowledge that they have a problem. Statistically, with regards to suicide, and it's a tough thing to talk about, is suicide. It's very difficult, but suicide is the biggest killer of young men between the ages of 16 and 25 in the UK. It is more, there are more suicides than there are deaths through alcohol, drugs, and road traffic accidents. There's a quite alarming spike of suicides in men between the ages of 45 and 54, I'm 51 years of age, and the spike is pronounced in the industrial areas of South Wales, Cornwall, the northwest of England, Yorkshire, and the northeast of England, central belt of Scotland. And for somebody to reach a place where they contemplate or complete suicide, they've often reached a place where they think that the people that they care about are better off without them. And that's a pretty drastic place to get to. But the ratio, as you can see on the slide there, is 77% of suicides in England and Wales are male. And that's the same across the other parts of the UK. Men are far less likely than women to seek help with medical problems. Women remain connected with primary healthcare support much more than men. And if women disconnect in some way, they tend to reconnect when they become a mother. I know from conversations with a man at Boots the chemist that construction workers don't go and collect their prescriptions. They ask partners, mothers, parents, etc., friends to collect it for them. The amount of depression is exactly the same, but women are twice as likely to be diagnosed and therefore treated. Other parts of this is men make up 94% of the prison population, 3 times more likely to be dependent on alcohol, 85% of people who sleep rough, 73% of people who go missing, and 77% of suicides. These are quite startling statistics around men. And although there is change coming with regards to our diversity, we are still absolutely dominated, particularly at the coalface, by men doing it tough. And we're now in excess of 6,000 recorded suicides. In Australia, Mates in Construction was started in 2008 by Jørgen Gullestrup, who was a Danish electrician. He had a mental health problem, suffered with depression, and came out of that and joined a union and eventually started Mates in Brisbane. Like the situation we find ourselves in now, they didn't know the true statistics of where they are. So they've commissioned some reports with Armit in Melbourne and universities in Brisbane, and they've put some money numbers towards the annual cost of suicides in the Australian states there. And just in Western Australia, the cost is $460 million, which is obviously a significant amount, and the numbers are, and the percentages are very similar to ours. In 2013, 35 construction workers died as a result of an accident on construction sites, and I've spent 16 years working in what was MCG and UKCG companies, the big contractors, and that year there were no deaths from UKCG members. Work in Australia has shown that you are 6 times more likely to die from suicide than you are falling from height. This is a question I don't know the answer to, but I'd like to pose a question to the people listening of how much money do we spend on fall prevention and how much money do we spend on suicide prevention in the construction industry? The answer to one of them is very small, and the answer to the other one is very, very large amount of money being spent. In Ireland, the Irish Times have noted that 49% of suicides there are people working in or associated with the construction industry, which is again a startling figure. And based on this data, I've been talking to people and saying that we have around about 182 suicides in the construction industry each year. And that was just an estimate with a finger in the air based on the multiplier of 6, which you can see at the top of the page. Recent information I've come across tells me the situation is much graver than that. In America, some statistics there. These were kindly provided to me by BOHS. The rate of this is by trades, and farming, fishing and forestry is the highest with 84, as you can see, or 90 with males, but construction is the next highest, so that's 52.5 male suicides per 100,000 workers in the States, which gives a baseline. Next, I got some information from HSE in Scotland, and thanks to Mark for that. And this was the suicide report from 2012. In 2009-10, Scotland recorded 1,083 suicides, which is a dreadful statistic. But the startling one for me was the following page, where just 4 trades of carpenters and joiners, electricians, labourers and painters and decorators made up 140 of those 1,083. So just 4 trades made up a huge proportion. So there's no mention of any of the other trades. You had to reach more than 20 to get into that, to get into the table. So again, I'm guessing that I've been significantly underestimating the amount of suicides which start from the construction industry. And I said the Irish Times, theirs was 49% of suicides in Ireland were construction workers. So I've put some statistics together, and I'm not going to read the whole slide at you, but 12.92 suicides from Scotland came from 4 major trades. They have a population of 5 million people. The whole of the UK has a population of 63 million people. Total number of suicides in 2014, the CALM zone, which is CALM is the Campaign Against a Life of Misery, which is specifically aimed at young men. They're led by a rapper called Professor Green. I'm told is very good. Professor Green, his father committed suicide, and he's campaigning hard to get the conversation going. But if we just had 12.9% of the nearly 6,000 suicides in the UK, that comes to 733 construction worker suicides, which is extremely confronting and sobering question. We don't really know the answers to why, as a male, you're 3 times more likely to commit suicide. And we can't specifically say it's exactly this number, because suicide is not recorded in that way. But the evidence we're gathering is that working in the construction industry puts you in the highest risk group of people working in the UK at this time. In Australia, I was had the privilege of spending some time with a man called Jeff Kennett, who's the Premier of the state of Victoria and the founder of an organisation called Beyond Blue, and he's campaigned for mental health for many years. In Australia, the male suicide rates are perceived to be high because of the choice of method of ending your life, where they use their vehicle, a weapon, or a noose, and they tend to be tragically effective ways of ending your life. So how does Mates in Construction work? And I must stress that Mates in Construction has not launched just in the UK. It's something we're working at really hard. And the Health in Construction Leadership Group is in negotiations with a number of parties, which I'll share with you. Some of it's a bit sensitive, but we're hoping to launch in the next couple of months. How does it work? We invite everybody in the construction industry to undergo an induction. The Australians refer it to as general awareness training. It's an hour, and I would suggest on a typical building site, if there's a big building site, if there's an induction every day, you may run a Mates in Construction twice that week. It's an hour. It's a standard package. It's delivered to groups of people. My thoughts are that we wouldn't make it mandatory. It'd be absolutely voluntary, but it's such a good product that word would get around quickly, and people would say it's a good idea to go and do this. Once done, you would get that sticker you can see on the screen and put it on your helmet. And my vision is this is accepted by all contractors and recognised everywhere, and people would know that you'd undergone that induction. I've done it. I sat through it a couple of times in Australia. It's powerful, it's punchy, it's short, it's to the point, and it gives the people undergoing the induction an immediate opportunity to make contact with people should they need support right now. And that happens quite often. The next training we would give would be to a group of people called connectors. This is a 3-hour training course, and it would be typically aimed at gangers, supervisors, foremen, maybe the forklift driver, the crane driver, somebody who's there on site a long time, has a bit of a presence about them, and tends to be respected by people. And what the connector does is keep people safe. So you could be anybody on site, but you'd recognise that sticker on a helmet, and you could go and talk to that connector. And the connector would understand why you were talking to them, and they will keep you safe. The next sticker is a blue one, and this would be for people completing the 2-day first aid course. And they've had some skills training and can do a little bit more. So I must stress this is first aid. This is not the ability to diagnose and treat mental illness, and we don't issue people with any couches to run counselling sessions on during the working day. It's very much first aid, but we would have those connections there. So just to recap, everybody is invited to do an hour. Crucially, we would keep a database which would be accessible to people with due care towards data protection, and you would go on there as inducted into Mates. The connectors are the good guys on site, and girls, of course. People would recognise that and go and have a conversation. And then the assist people and the first aiders have done a 2-day training course and a bit more advanced. Having as a first aider and a known first aider, I have some experience of people coming to talk to me. And the key thing with what does a mental health first aider do is they listen. And I've listened, and on some occasions, one conversation is all that somebody needs, the ability to vent and offload, and just get it off their chest and share that problem. And that works for some people. Other people are fairly distressed and need significant support. So in summary, everybody would get general awareness training. We'd train connectors. We'd have the mental health first aiders or the assist, and the assist is applied suicide prevention training. And at the top is very critical healthcare support. So on the other side of the hoarding and away from the site. So what Mates in Construction does not do is create a massive network of medical professionals working in the industry. We tap in to these organisations, and I've got fantastic responses from chief executives at Mind, Samaritans and Mental Health First Aid, all of whom I've discussed with in the last few weeks. Mind is 181 branches around the UK. Samaritans is 190 around the UK, and Samaritans has 21,000 people volunteering as Samaritans. And any of you who travel on the rail in recent times will see a very high profile Samaritans campaign, which is done in partnership with the rail companies, because sadly and tragically the railway is often a place people may choose to end their lives. So there's a great campaign there, and Mental Health First Aid have trained 100,000 first aiders in the UK now. There are 2,000 tutors from the top of Scotland down to the south coast of England and everywhere, and all of these organisations want to support us by providing the training, and in the case of Mind and Samaritans, providing local branches where you can just reach out and get help from people, and they're in every town and city across the UK. So that's the key. We do some training internally. We get some connectors and some first aiders, and all around us we just access these existing and wonderful organisations who will provide support for us. We need to establish a headquarters. We've done a gap analysis on the education material in Australia, and we're seeking Mates in Construction approval. We're going to create some master trainers, 10 around the UK, who can ensure that we're delivering the right material and be the custodians of the material we're training. We'd train 200 trainers of the existing mental health trainers. We'd train 200 around the UK and give them a further qualification of accredited to deliver Mates in Construction. We'd then begin to train the connectors. We'd create a network of suicide prevention and mental health first aiders, and we'd provide training for the presenters to get going. We'd then begin to deliver the sessions in every yard and site and office and location in the UK. It takes an hour. We'd have to build the material and the databases, etc., but we've not encountered any barriers yet, just people finding ways to help this and make it work. CITB have been really positive and indicating they'd be very favourable towards including this in apprentice training and also in the Site Safety Plus suite of training from the health side of things, which is, of course, all of occupational health has got tremendous traction. As well as the three organisations of Mind, Mental Health First Aid and Samaritans that I've mentioned, Living Works is a Canadian-based mental health programme, Department of Health, Public Health England, National Health Service, Campaign Against the Life of Misery, Papyrus, etc., which is a support network for the bereaved, all want to be part of this. And I've included a link there to the State of Mind website, and I encourage you to go on it, and you'll see how this works. In every town and city, there's a drop-down box of options for people where they can go and get support where they are, local, where people would understand. What about the well-being side of things? Part of the State of Mind launch this week is a new way of 5 ways to well-being, and it came from Mind, and a bit of an insight for people on how this might work. There are 5 things. Keep learning, take on new challenges, and just continue to keep your mind active. Take notice, take some time out and have a look around what's going on. Connecting with people is critical, and one I always use for myself, which I'm happy to share with you, and I encourage everybody on the line to do this today. On your way home, providing it's safe to do so, phone somebody up from your family or your friends that you haven't spoken to for a while. They'll probably think you're after a favour or some money or something like that, but just having that conversation with people and saying, how are you and how's things, and I hope you're well, is a massive boost to the person delivering the message, and an even bigger one to the person receiving it, just to know that somebody's taken the time to care about them and inquire as to their well-being. That connection thing is absolutely critical. Give, spontaneous and random acts of kindness are just a fantastic way of doing things, and they make everybody feel good, and being active. Again, a study from Australia I came across from working out there was 20 minutes brisk walk a day adds 3 years to your life. So we're not talking about massive weights programs down the gym, just that 20 minutes of reasonably vigorous physical activity gets your mind going and is very, very positive. I've delivered some presentations recently. One at the ICE conference, and this is not about self-promotion from Martin Coyd, but somebody observing in the audience remarked that the presentation I delivered, which bears some similarities to the information I've shared today on the webinar, was the one that stood out and struck people and made people think. And we have an opportunity, but I also believe that we as an industry have an obligation to challenge this. And I also believe that if the mental health is good of the building site, and I'm not talking about diagnosed mental illnesses, I'm just talking about mental health, well-being, frame of mind, state of mind. Are we in a good place? Life just gets better and people can thrive. And good mental health for the project considerably improves safety performance as well, because people want to play the game and be part of this. There's every reason why we should do this. There was also, following the ICE conference, I presented at Safety and Health Expo and talked about this, and that was reported in SHP magazine. And I got a fantastic response there. So what do we need to do to move this forward? Well, we need to establish a Mates in Construction host, and we're close to doing that. We're in negotiation with a tremendous organisation who are very keen to take this on. We would have a database, so the poor old worker who gets run ragged by the demands of the big contractors would do this once, but of course if they wanted to do it again they could retrain. But when you're on the database and you're in, we need to have an employer, because it's going to take some staff to run this, and it's going to take some funding, a considerable amount of funding, and the number I'm working towards is £500,000 startup fund to employ staff, to print the material, to establish all the things we need to do, and then we need to maintain that. There'd be a board, and it would most likely come from the existing members of the construction Health and Construction Leadership Group, should I say, unions, Build UK, Civil Engineering Contractors Association, Construction Clients Group, HSE, IOSH, BNCE, the industry pensions body, CITB, and a couple of non-executive directors. So we make it a truly universal organisation when the needs and interests of all of the industry are supported. And we need to get some trustees in there as well. We need to appoint a programme director and then develop a strategy. So we've got the training material, we've got the principles, we need to go through some legal matters. We have been given permission in principle to operate the Mates franchise in the UK, and I believe this could possibly go global and may go beyond construction. I know in Australia there is now conversations around mates in mining, and the Australian mining industry is in a state of flux at this moment. The Chinese import thing has changed, and people are under a lot of pressure, and they have a significant challenge with what's known as the fly-in, fly-out, or FIFO situation, where people work 8 to 10 day shifts away from home and then go home for an extended break, 5 days, and then come back in again. And they are struggling. People talk about a growing problem of mental health. Indeed, it's on the title slide of the presentation I've done today. I think it's always been there, but the pressures on life are now extraordinary, and the fact that all of us have a mobile phone, at least one at the end of our arms, and all manner of instant media, and you can have anything you want now, including information or products or money, and the social media side of things, where people are judged all day, every day, on how they look, whether they fit in and whether they belong, and what their achievements are. And that's particularly prevalent with young people. I'm a parent of 14, 18 and 20-year-olds, and they are constantly bombarded, and there's no respite from this. And this perpetual pressure on people all day, every day to deliver means that we are sitting on a potential time bomb with regards to mental health. The military have learned so much in the past, I guess, 16 years with their involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's many types. Then the spectrum of mental health is just enormous, and we know so little about it. But they've begun to tackle it and begun to talk about it, and the military are making some steps where no longer is it a sign of weakness to express how you feel around mental health issues. The team I support is Warrington Rugby League Club, and I know they've made some really strong steps there, that the player group sit together at least once a week and talk about how they're feeling, and the leaders, the strong players, the ones that everybody look up to, are very, very candid with how they are, and they may be concerned about an injury, or they may be concerned about their fitness levels or performance levels or their form, and whether they're going to get picked for the team next week. And they understand from what's happening is this is pulling them together much closer as a group, and they've turned the common perception of this is a sign of weakness on its head, and it's now being recognised that it actually takes an enormous amount of courage to confront the mental health issues and begin to talk about it in a candid and open way, and they're getting a lot from it. I also am aware that some of the stuff that I've raised today, particularly around suicide, may have impacted on people. I'm confident that everybody on the line today and listening in today has been impacted by mental health in some way. Maybe themselves and how they feel themselves. Maybe somebody they love and they care about, a colleague or a friend, or somebody down at the drama group, the darts team, or the 5-a-side team in which they belong. We've all been touched by this, but our ability to be able to talk about it and discuss it has always been a real challenge because of our culture and the way we are. Well, we're changing that, and having that conversation, having role models step forward, having people talk about how they feel, explaining that they're on a bit of a spectrum and people can move around is very, very important. So there you have my email address and telephone number, and if you think I can help, please ask, and if I can't, I'll point you in the right direction of somebody that can. I've spoken for a long time. I understand from Ben that there may be some questions, so we're going to go and try and go through those now. And if you have anything, please go to the box and type your question in. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. We have a fantastic opportunity as an industry to work together, do a simple and accessible program which could have a massive impact and change millions of people's lives. It was the 60th anniversary of the organisation Mind about 3 weeks ago. I had the privilege of going to the celebration dinner at the Café Royal. And what I didn't know is that Mind was set up in 1946, parallel to the National Health Service, by the Labour government at the time, because they were concerned of the state of the mental health of the nation post-war, in a time of uncertainty and rationing, and people were struggling. I think there's some parallels with 2016 and 60 years later on. Again, we're in that period of uncertainty, political turmoil. We've had war until recent times when it didn't impact on the UK, but it certainly impacted on some of our people. And I'd encourage all of you to ask this simple question. Ask people how they are and have that conversation and just say, how are you? And the men will say, I'm fine, thank you very much. But ask them again. Okay, questions?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Martin. I think a lot of people apparently share my view that was a very interesting presentation and certainly very thought-provoking, and one that people, by the looks of things, would like to hear more about and get behind. We do have a lot of questions, so I am going to try and go through these as best as possible. So the first question I'm going to ask you then is from Amanda, and that question is, why do you think that the suicide rate is so high amongst people working in the industry?
It's very hard to put your finger on absolutely why with confidence. It's a tough life. It's not particularly well paid. Job security is low. I tend to spend most of my working life in and around cities, and the construction workers in cities are on quite a remarkable merry-go-round, and most of the people today won't know where they're working next Monday. It's typical on the big contractors to be inducting 30 to 40% of new starters every month on jobs with hundreds of people on there, and it's quite remarkable. So tough industry. Lack of job security, not particularly well paid, confrontational, not particularly supportive environment. The industry's changed where very few of the major contractors employ directly anymore, and we're pretty much in a gangmaster and labour agency type environment.
Okay, brilliant. There's one here from Sean Headley. He has asked whether there any data on what these people did prior to joining the construction industry, or background or anything like that at all.
The data is very, very scarce, and one thing I didn't mention during the presentation is a condition of getting a mate's franchise is a research program to be done by a university into exactly this type of thing, because the answer is we don't know what it was. One of the reasons I'm very confident that this will work in construction is the armed forces have a mental health first aid program. The armed forces did a lot of traumatic stress following Afghanistan and Iraq, when a lot of cases the soldiers didn't know if their next step would be their last one. And they introduced something known as decompression, which is basically pressure relief in Cyprus, rather than just bringing the soldiers straight back home. And the Armed Forces mental health program trains soldiers and their families and all this, and they're beginning to get some really interesting data. But the answer to Sean's question is we don't know.
Fair enough then. Brian Wood here has asked, is there any consideration to drug or alcohol testing on construction sites, thereby identifying potential risk of someone?
It's a great question, Brian, and I'll share my personal story with you. I introduced drug and alcohol testing in 2005 at the organisation I was working at the time, and I was particularly unpopular, and I collided with the unions who talked about human rights, and I countered with them. I'm more interested in the human rights of the people who are not taking drugs on site. And I got to Lend Lease, and the same drug and alcohol testing program was in place. And it wasn't about catching people. If it was, we'd have tested everybody. It was more of a deterrent, and we wanted to know where we were. Since my exposure to mental health, I've now got a very different view on drug and alcohol misuse, where people who are taking what's called recreational drugs in the morning at the beginning of a working day are probably masking how they feel with regards to their mental health rather than a desire to have a good time on a building site, which was perhaps my sort of naive view that drug takers were bad people and we didn't want them on our sites and in our industry. I've learned an awful lot about this, people using recreational or illicit drugs, but also the use of prescription drugs to just numb themselves a bit and take that pain away. And my mind is now moving towards we should be providing help and support for people as opposed to sacking them, giving them a black mark and kicking them off site with a, that just is making the problem worse. So I've had a significant turnaround in my understanding and the direction of travel I've got. And mental health and drugs and alcohol are absolutely linked, and are part of a vicious circle where they feed off one another. So we can do an awful lot to help and support people there.
Okay, great. So Amanda has come in with a question here. So the industry has an established culture, which is a way of life for most people working in it. But how do you think this ingrained way of being can be changed to enable a change in the culture and lifestyles?
I'm really proud of working in the construction industry. I started at 16 years of age as a chain boy at Fairclough Tunnelling. And the thing that attracted me to construction then, which is the culture you've described of work hard, play hard, the crack, if you like, is what makes us great and enables us to deliver these almost impossible projects of incredible buildings and bridges and roads. But also, the built environment makes a difference to people's lives, and the built environment for me is just very, very special thing of what we do. So I wouldn't want to change that thing that makes us great and causes people to come in, but we can just modify it, where we can introduce a culture of care and respect and sort of love for the people around you. And love's a strong word, and not many builders, would want to have a conversation about loving people. But as I said at the beginning, I'm an unlikely advocate of this. I still play rugby league at 51. Which is a bit of it's daft really, because it hurts. And I still love that robust side of life, and that's really important. But you can have all of that and care, and I'm confident that the Mates in Construction programme will reach those great people who make our industry what it is, and we can change that with role models, that it doesn't have to be abrasive. And you can take a little bit of time out to make a difference.
Okay, great. So there is a question here. There's a couple of questions here actually. I think they relate to the training that you mentioned earlier in the inductions. And this one is from Nikki, and it's just simply, how do you select your assist individuals?
I've been a mental health first aid instructor since 2011, and it's really difficult. Some people do the training course and decide they never want to discuss it ever again because it is such a confronting program and can be upsetting for people. And because we're all so different, there's no one answer. The people have to be volunteers in the first place. They have to be, I think they have to be in a position where they're respected by their peers and have integrity and a sincerity about them to make a difference. But I find those people all over our industry, and that making a difference to people's lives and the reward that it brings I tend to find it self-selecting. I introduced mental health first aid training into Lend Lease. At the time it had 2,400 staff, and we've now trained over 150 mental health first aiders, and we are inundated with people wanting to do the course. It's that popular because it does make a difference. And I found, because this, and it was a revolution, started at the bottom of the organisation and came up from the masses, if you like, rather than being the CEO who said we'll have this amount of first aiders. It just grew its own legs, And again, it's another reason why I have confidence that this program will work so well, and we would use the mental health first aid training as the basis for our mates program.
Matt has asked the question with regards to the training. Is bespoke training offered as a product, or does this lead to trainer package allowing for self-sufficiency?
In Australia, they use a program called Living Works, and the ASSIST program, which is applied suicide intervention training. It's not particularly prevalent in the UK. There are a couple of hundred people, mainly based in the south of England. We would hope to, and it's not confirmed yet, but we'd like to use the mental health first aid training, which is established and available right now. You can get information from a website, mhfaengland.org, or if you just Google MHFA, you'll find what you need. And I'd encourage people to start looking down that route right now. And I'm hopeful that when we can get mates going, that the training that you may have done will be transferable as a qualification. And it is available all over the UK.
Sharon has asked an interesting question here. How do you reach those in the supply chain who may only be on site for a couple of days on first and second fix? Are they also at a higher risk?
Yes, I would think that these guys are at high risk, just bouncing around between sites. I recognise that as sort of dry liner type trades. If we can get a wide enough organisation, a network of training programs across all of the UK, and I really believe that it will become a high demand program, we can get to them. And if we can use CITB and other organisations to get to people, that would be really good. The supply chain are hard. We have Lend Lease has a strong network of black hats or supervisors, and I've done a couple of presentations to that group, and whilst they engage at the time, it's a big step for SMEs, as they're called, small and medium enterprises, to come forward and engage with this, and it's going to be a difficult challenge, but we need to tackle it head on. I'm confident that the Build UK membership, I know that the Build UK membership, which is 27 principal contractors and 43 trade associations, are keen to get a nationwide mental health program going. So hopefully through those trade associations, we can do so. So I presented at the FIS conference, which is the fit out sector, and also at their health and safety leadership group. So they're engaged and want to do something and are waiting, and I think we can cascade it down using the networks that are established already.
Okay, great. I suppose the next question actually kind of follows on a little bit when we talk about the idea of the initiative sort of building steam, as it were. James Irwin here has said, given the scale of the problem, would you look in some instances to make induction mandatory?
Having seen a similar type of initiative around behavioural based safety, so IIF and SUSE, etc. My experience is it has a negative impact on the worker, who are made to jump through hoops by different contractors all the time with well-intended but different things, and they're just driven to distraction by it and frustration. And I have some really powerful feedback which came to me when I was chairing the UKCG and Build UK groups of, can you guys just all agree on one thing and just do it consistently? Press ganging people to do it, I think, would be negative and perceived in a negative way of, I'm being made to do something I don't do. I have such confidence in the product itself, the training and the impact it will have, that it will just get its own momentum, and therefore they would feel like there was ownership by people as opposed to something that the big contractors are making us do again.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask this question because it appears that quite a few people have asked it, and that is basically that how can people get further information on the initiative, and how can they also get involved in the scheme?
We're hoping to finalise the business plan and get it through a potential host organisation, which means we don't have to set up a new organisation from start. We'll be hopefully joining with an existing, very highly respected organisation who would become the partner and help us delivery on this. And within just over a month's time, we hope to be able to make an announcement to answer that very specific question. In the initial time, please feel free to email me, and I'll ensure that we communicate where we're going with this. And if we can develop a network of people who are prepared to support it around the UK, it would be just fantastic. And that network opportunity would be brilliant. And it will be very, very much voluntary led, and we need to keep the costs down as much as we possibly can. If we can make this simple at the point of delivery and accessible to everybody, it'll fly.
Excellent, that's great. And following on from what Martin just said, his email address is currently on the slide. So if you do have any, if you do want to get in touch with him about any more details, then you can do. Okay, I've got a question here from William Gundry. Now we've got time for a couple more, hopefully. This one here is, he says, I find a lot of resistance from CEOs to address stress issues, as they appear to be concerned about raising the possibility of personal injury claims and absenteeism. How would you advise we allay their fears?
Great question, and one I've had on a number of occasions. It does scare business leaders. Some of the feedback I've had directly and indirectly is you're about to invent the new bad back. You're going to let a genie out of a bottle, we'll never get it back in. We don't want to look underneath this stone, and it really can frighten people about what they might find. But the enlightened and people with vision will see that you need to do this. And there may be a J-curve scenario. If you can imagine a letter J, that you get worse before you get much better. But the alternative is bouncing along on one of those plateaus that we all dread. And people with the bravery and the courage and the foresight and the vision will take that step, put things in place to support people. And all organisations now, their vision and values is around creating better places and valuing our staff and valuing our people. And you can have the confidence to go forward that with organisations like Mental Health First Aid and Mind and Samaritans backing us, along with Department of Health, Public Health England, National Health Service. The CEO of the National Health Service said anything you can do to prevent people reaching primary mental health care in the NHS, we'd be absolutely welcome and will support fantastically well. So this is a great opportunity to pull together and do a team effort, and if everybody does, we can make a massive difference.
Okay, that's brilliant. I think we'll just try and squeeze in one more question, and this one is from James. He has asked, how do you see MATES linking into the various behavioural change programmes currently in use within the construction industry in the UK?
Well, I touched on it earlier that there is a sort of there's a number of the behavioural change programmes which are all driving at the same thing. A behavioural change programme like IAF is around culture, about being treated as you want to be treated yourself. That's incident and injury free. Forgive me, it's quite a well established one. I think they're very much in partnership. The theme and principles are the same, around respect for people, recognising people as individuals, and just being a good citizen, belonging and making a difference in the industry. And yes, they can complement very easily, but they're slightly different and should stand alone.
Excellent. We are going to have to call it a day at that point. There are some questions here that are still we haven't been able to touch on. But what I will try and do is I'll call Martin after this and see whether we can whether I can take down some written answers, which I can then supply back later on after the session, along with a copy of the recording. There is a recording of this being made, and also the presentation will be provided as a PDF to all of you for all of those of you who attended. That will be emailed out either later on today or tomorrow at some point once it's on the IOSH website. When I email, I'll also be supplying you with a link to a feedback form, and obviously we would welcome any feedback that you have on the session, because it does help us to continually, improve the standard of our webinars. But I would like to say a massive thank you to Martin for travelling all the way here to come and deliver this session. I think, based on a lot of the comments that are coming in, I think it was a very worthwhile session. A lot of people were very, very pleased with the content and the initiative as a whole, and hopefully it can continue to progress.
I've made the call to arms. I really believe that we can make a difference to the whole industry and the nation. The construction industry and the built environment is the backbone of what we do. I'm sure everybody on the line shares that pride in belonging to this wonderful place. And by doing something simple together, we can make a difference to millions of people's lives. I'd like to thank IOSH for the opportunity and thank all of you for taking the time to come in. I can also see some of the chat, and I'm very grateful for that feedback, and it's very humbling. Thank you very much.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that is all we have time for. I shall leave the session open just for another minute or so, just for any final comments or questions that might come in. And once again, thank you very much to Martin for a great session, and we hope to see you guys at more webinars soon. Okay then, thank you very much and goodbye.